Well, hello and welcome everybody to the book launch celebration for Shawn Banzhaf's The Five L's, a practical guide for helping loved ones heal after trauma. My name is Renee Bhatti-Klug, and I'm the founder and CEO of Culturally Intelligent Training and Consulting. I want to welcome my co-facilitator and second in command, my right-hand woman, Alene Terzian-Zeitounian, to the table. Good. Hi, Alene. And then, of course, the star of today, and one of the most, this is what I love most about Shawn. He is one of the most confidently humble people I've ever met. And he is able to walk in that space of being full of love and full of grace, but also full of amazing confidence. So I love that about you, Shawn. And I want to say congratulations. Shawn's book has done tremendously well on Amazon, #1 in military families. So just to give you a high overview of today before I give it to Shawn, we are going to have a discussion with Shawn, but before that, he will read to you from his book, The Five L's, twice, and then there'll be an audience Q&A. So if you have any questions for Shawn, go ahead and leave it in the chat. So to do a few housekeeping, you can keep your cameras on. We love seeing you, so keep them on, or you can turn them off. It's absolutely no problem. We also have a rule that we don't apologize for children or animals or noises or garbage people. That this is life. We are all trying to live and accommodate in a global pandemic. And so guess what? We do not apologize for our lives. So we want to say thank you for being here. We also want to let you know that Culturally Intelligent, all three of us are trainers in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We can come alongside your organization and provide an ongoing solution for building a culture of belonging. And so that is in the chat. And we will give you a lot of links throughout. So before we begin, I want to give you a little bit of background on Shawn. Shawn is a highly innovative trainer and fresh author who inspires others around him to learn. He is considered by many to be an experienced developer of people, which is appropriate to the origin of his name. Banz in German, in the south of German, is a maker of vats and drinking vessels, and Hafen means pot. He longs to help form people or vessels to be most receptive to great things in life. For 21 years, Shawn served the United States in the Army National Guard. He is an Iraqi war veteran, during which he earned the Bronze Star and Combat Action Badge while executing 100 combat missions in and around Baghdad, Ramadi, and Fallujah. Shawn also served his community as a police sergeant and campus pastor in both Nebraska and Arizona. Since 2015, Shawn has been part of the Pat Tillman Veterans Center at Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona, and currently serves as the senior military advocate for their center in service of over 10,000 military-affiliated students. He is also completing his graduate work in sociology at ASU. Shawn is a lead facilitator for ASU's Trek for Vets in partnership with Huts for Vets Wilderness Therapy, connected to the trauma-informed movement across Arizona, and most significantly and thankfully for us, a senior trainer and consultant for CITC, specifically serving the veterans and military-affiliated communities. He is husband to Jody, who is here with us, whom he partners with to serve communities. He enjoys cooking and spending time with his 2 children and 4 grandchildren. He also enjoys wearing glasses and all different sorts. As the creator of The 5 L's, a practical guide for helping loved ones heal after trauma, he has trained over 1,000 individuals on how using this method is a tool anyone can use with a loved one struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, whether veteran or not. So Shawn, I'm going to hand it over to you. Maybe you can give us a quick high overview of what the 5 L's are and then go straight into a reading of your book.
Thank you, Renee. Thanks everybody for coming. I think I get emotional. Just seeing everybody here is pretty awesome. So the 5 L's, you can see I have them right behind me. I keep them written up on my board. I keep them kind of everywhere. Working as the senior military advocate, what I realized is a lot of people that I work with, colleagues, we expect them to be able to help veterans and other people who have walked through trauma, and we haven't really given them any tools to do so. So, you know, it was a pretty personal thing to me, but I had actually prayed and I asked God to help me help student veterans, and it was just like this, 5 L's dropped into my head and they all came out just the way it is. And so honestly, it is about helping veterans who walk through PTSD, but as a person who's went through more than just the trauma of war, I have other traumas that I've walked through as a kid and so on in my life. And I just realized really the 5 L's is just a practical way to live and to help other people. So I want to start out by telling you that this book, the 5 L's, is dedicated to my wife. She did these 5 things when I came home from Iraq, helped me get through it. So without further ado, I am going to try to read, and I'm reading from the 4th chapter. When you get the book, and I sure hope you do, you're going to notice that it's not very thick. That's because I'm an Army guy. I don't have a lot to say, but I just kind of get to the point. And about a third of the book is actually on the first L, which is to love. I feel like if you don't do the first thing when you're helping somebody with trauma, you're never going to find a space to do the other L's, which are love, and then listen, learn, lesson, and lead. So I'm going to read from chapter 4, which is the lesson chapter. So if you will. It was hot out that day, and the sun was beating down, and the sounds of the crowd that surrounded me were both safe and yet unsettling. I sat watching people move to and fro, weaving in and out of conversation, all without a care in the world. We were all sitting around in trusty lawn chairs, eating the traditional American cuisine of burgers and hot dogs, with ice-cold sodas in hand. The church had some patriotic banners flitting on the fence close by. I found it odd that everyone appeared unaware of the busy movement going on around them, and all of the loud bangs that enveloped the air. The echoing cracks and booms seemed to roll off the crowd as if they weren't even heard. How can they do this? How is it they're not flinching, and why aren't they looking around in every direction trying to figure out what's up? Perhaps, I thought, I just need to get away from this and hit the mobile latrine in the church parking lot. Yes, that will do. I'll get my bearings there while ridding myself of a few of these sodas at the same time. It was Nebraska on July 4th, so it was a particularly dense and humid heat wave. I was sweating bullets, and while standing in that porta-john, I began to feel transported to Iraq. The sweltering heat, tight space, and familiar, dank smell of the latrine emanating from below was a familiar experience downrange in Iraq. And since the bathroom is often a place of pause and reflection, it always is with me, by the way, in my mind, I began recalling all kinds of memories about this and that, but especially memories of wanting to be home and away from all the madness of war. And then, bang, pop, pop, pop. My body dropped to the floor. I stopped breathing and then began breathing rapidly. The heart inside my chest doubled its rate, pounding like a drum as fresh adrenaline coursed through my veins. My eyes flitted back and forth frantically, and I instinctively reached for my weapon, only to find that I didn't have one. Where are the shots coming from? Where's the nearest defense? How long should I stay here before running out for better cover? My mind raced through a series of options in a matter of seconds that seemed like an eternity. I had to survive whatever this was. And then, moments later, it hit me. I wasn't in Al Qaeda. I wasn't hearing small arms fire. I wasn't even in danger. I was in my own church parking lot, and Independence Day fireworks were being set off by kids from the youth ministry. Knowing this, however, obviously didn't prevent me from nearly melting down. My body was completely arrested. I was once again confronted with the fact that when the alarm bell of the emotional brain keeps signaling that you are in danger, no amount of insight will silence it. After pulling myself back together and taking a few controlled breaths, I walked out cautiously. I remained on high alert, even though I could see with my own eyes where I was and what was going on. It didn't matter. My brain and body had been trained over the course of 15 months to respond to perceived threats in a certain way. I walked across the lot and finally found Jody. She was sitting and talking to friends. She looked up and knew right away that something wasn't right. She stood up, called for our kids, and politely excused us from the gathering. Let's go home, babe. In that moment, those were the most powerful words ever spoken to this broken soldier. It was as if the storm clouds had cleared in my mind. My heart rate began to stabilize, and my breath returned to normal. I got in the car and went home. And though that evening was not unicorns and rainbows, because the fireworks burst on, I was able to at least find solace in my sanctuary called home. I survived the day. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Shawn.
Sure. Okay.
I'm going to invite Alene to go ahead and begin the questions for our Q&A.
Shawn, sorry, I need a moment to collect myself. I hope everyone in this room has a Jody in their lives too. So I want to start the questions out by asking you, what inspired you to create the 5 L's framework?
Alene, thank you. Ironically enough, it was a young student veteran named Zachary, which happens to be the name of my son. He came into the Pat Tillman Veteran Center here at ASU, and he struggled. He said he'd been diagnosed with PTSD, and there had been so many issues with him in class, and his instructors couldn't understand it, and he was just fighting to even stay in class. And I'm just listening to him, and I realized in that moment, actually, that as the senior military advocate, I felt almost, and a person who had walked through post-traumatic stress, I felt almost unable to help him. And I thought to myself, how can this be? And if I feel that way as the advocate, how does anybody else know how to help this student? And so that's really the genesis of this. So like I said, I had a prayer, those things came to me, and I really realized that all those things that Jody did for me, and we didn't have a name for them, I didn't have any words for them, but then it just came to me that she had actually followed this path, and she would tell you that she had no idea she was following any path, but she did those things, and that's where it came from. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And Shawn, we don't apologize for crying either. We
Sorry.
appreciate that. That was
I'm sorry.
really
I'm sorry.
No. But that was so important, and that's the story that you told me in person that it was most hard hitting. That sometimes we just have to look at somebody and be aware when they have trauma, that we need to hold that closely and recognize that even if they don't say anything or can't say anything, we can do something. And so I appreciate Jody, of course, for that, but particularly you as well. So over the last while, as you've created the 5 L's and tested it, and of course you knew this intuitively, how have they evolved?
That it's interesting. I was actually talking to my parents on the phone after the week after we released it on Amazon and after we published it. And my dad had purchased the book and he had read about halfway through, which obviously didn't take long. But what he told me was, this seems like it's more than just for veterans. And then he also told me it's not really as easy as you think to do these things, to love someone and to listen to them. I think he had got through the listen chapter. he said, we're so busy and listening to people really isn't something that's normal for us. You know, I'll talk about in the book about, I call it aerobic listening. And it's really this beautifully intense listening that means so much. Like right now, you're all probably aerobically listening to me. You're watching me, you're seeing me, you're hearing me, you're feeling me. All of our senses can be used. And I really think overall, Renee, how it's transformed a bit. It's went from the veteran space over here, but it's went into like this lifestyle. Can you learn to do these 5 things? Because if we can, honestly, we're not going to have shootings in Atlanta. We're not going to have shootings in Colorado. Like if you could just truly find a space where you could love someone. I came up with this acronym. I'm an acronym person. Obviously, you might notice that in the book for sure, and then, you know, the 5 L's, but I came up with this acronym for HATE. And hate to me is halted, acceptance, tolerance, and empathy. When we halt accepting people, when we halt the tolerance of other people's opinions, and when we halt our empathy for other people, it actually equates to non-love. And the opposite of love is hate. How can we, I guess, move forward to love people well? Like, how can we stop the hate? And I hope, honestly, Renee, that this book, that's why I wrote it. I wrote it for a lot of reasons, but I want people to begin to see other people in a light where they can love them. So I want it to be a movement more than just, here's 5 great things that you can do for a soldier who has PTSD.
Thank you, Shawn. So we know that you are an advocate for people. So my next question is, besides yourself, who has been most impacted by the 5 L's?
Well, I think what's interesting, my assistant author, if you buy the book, his name is Jamin Hubner. This is a kind of a one-off, but he helped me write it, helped me with references and different things. He's just this really highly intellectual person that I just love him. He's a good friend of mine too. Look into his other stuff. But he was telling me, it was great. He emailed me and he said, Shawn, I'm sitting in the coffee shop and I'm watching the Amazon page and I'm looking at it where it says the #1 best-selling new release for military families. And he said, isn't it just good to know that we're helping people understand a new way to live? And how good it was just to be sitting in that moment. And he's not a veteran, but he realized that these things, they go across into other spheres. And I think, you know, that's special to me. And I hope, like, just like Jamin and just like my dad, and just like I hope when my kids and my grandkids read this book that, you know, I'm about legacy. I want them to know that that you can, if you take the time, you can advocate for other people. You can love them and listen to them, and learn from them, lessen their trauma, and then lead them. Like there's this beautiful harmony, this symposium in my head about what this really looks like. So I've heard from a few people on Amazon and on Facebook. One quick story, and I really love this. A veteran friend of mine, she had recommended the book to her sister. Her sister got the book right away because she wanted to know about her sister, the veteran, and maybe understand a little bit about her trauma. But as she's reading it, she called like 3 times, I think she said, within the first 50 pages and said, this book is changing my life. And then she wrote on Amazon, it wasn't even just about how she's connecting with her sister, but her own trauma. And then the trauma of her husband, who's a firefighter. You know, like there's so many spaces there. So yeah, it's affecting people's lives for sure. I just can't wait to hear in the end how many people it's affected in their stories. I love that too. So.
It's true. And how is my volume? Is it okay now? It needs to go up. All right. I think I need to unplug
Can you hear me better now? Okay, it was because of these. My people are here, so but we don't apologize for our people. So, Shawn, you've mentioned how maybe there wouldn't have been an Atlanta or a Boulder. And I want to give honor right now to the 10 victims of the Boulder shooting that happened yesterday. Today is March 23rd, 2021, and just say that our hearts are with the families and the community members in Boulder and beyond. And we are devastated to hear about the loss of life and just the continuous impact that these situations have. But connected to this, and this is a hard question because you kind of have to go back in time, but let's say that the 5 L's, that you had these tools, that Jody had these tools, and maybe she did secretly and you were, whatever, but all of this happened when you were, you're still a young man, but when you were a younger man. How would your life have been different if this, maybe let's say this, if this had been the framework your entire life, if this is just who you were? I know that that's kind of a nebulous question, but I think it's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question, and I appreciate it. I spent a lot of time in my life either in personal trauma or as a police officer, watching the trauma of little kids that, little 7-year-old boy out hunting with his uncle comes back. He tells his uncle that his stepdad had molested him, and then they're in my office, and I'm hearing this little kid recount all the trauma, and I thought, it's hard, right? And then I start thinking about all of us. That's the thing about trauma. If you have a friend, usually that friend is going to be the person that you'll tell about the trauma. And friends, all of us are a friend to someone, and not having these tools, like these 5 L's, if you can't put words to them, you're actually probably doing some of these things. But there's times where you feel, and I did when I was younger, I did when I was kind of in my 30s and 20s trying to be a cop, and there's this space, if you just had some kind of framework and somebody put to words the things that you needed to do to help your friend, I think it would have changed my life. I was thinking about that young boy. If I would have listened even better, maybe if I would have chose even more so to love him, because I don't know, after I arrested his stepdad and I took care of that problem, I don't know where he went from there. And had maybe I spent more time with the 5 L's, maybe I could have helped change his life, because I don't know what happened to him. So there's just so much, Renee, that is involved in this, that, I think my life would have been better had I known about the 5 L's, and I think the people around me's lives would have been better all the way along.
Thank you. So I have another question, and this one is regarding the future of the 5 L's. So I know that you talked a little bit about how you hope that this transcends beyond the veteran community, and that it can go into homes where people really need them to make real change.
Yeah.
Do you have, besides that vision, do you have a dream vision for, if it could just reach the Mars, what would that vision be for your 5 L's framework?
Well, I was kind of discussing with the two of you prior to our event today. Yes, it's about PTSD, it's about the veteran community, but my heart really, talking with my son-in-law, who's a young Black man in the South, he and I were talking about counseling and different things like that, and how in communities of color, counseling, going to a counselor is considered sometimes as a weakness. And not to mention the fact that services for communities of color are lacking. And so for this particular book right now, my giant dream is that it would get into every hand of all the veterans and their families, but then into communities of color. And, I've made some pings to different people in those communities and said, hey, help me get this out. I Instagram messaged Oprah today. Like, I have no idea what that's going to do, Alene, but like, what the heck? Let's just throw it down, see if she says, hey, let's check out Shawn's book, and who knows, you know, because honestly, I want it to be more than just about the veteran community. So that's step one, is to get it into communities of color, along with the veteran community. And step two is book two, and it's going to be coming out. It's called The Return of the 5 L's, Practically Loving Me. And so it's taking these 5 L's and turning them back on yourself. So what I've watched, what I witnessed in my own life is, after you've been traumatized, you forget how to love yourself. In fact, the person who traumatized you stole that from you, right? They took it. It could be war, it could be a dad, it could be a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever it is, that person, that thing, it took your self-love. And so I thought about, what if we flip the 5 L's back on ourselves and we inverted them? So it's not just a flip, but it's an invert. So to start leading yourself and say, I am going to take back my love. I'm taking it back, and I'm going to lead myself out of that space. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lessen some of the things in my life that trip me up. Okay. A lot of times we have these things in our life. Maybe they're toxic relationships, maybe they're a job, those kinds of things that continue to steal your love. All right. And then, so after I've done that, I'm going to learn who the new Shawn is. Like, I start to love myself. That's a new person. It's just like when I was pre-war Shawn and post-war Shawn. I'm two different people. So I've got to learn who the new Shawn is. And then I've got to listen to my body. I've got to listen to my heart. I've got to listen to myself again. Stop listening to the noise on the outside and start listening to me. And then finally, I'm going to love myself. So that's the basis and the thesis around my second book. And I hope that you'll look into that too when it comes out. And past that, I'm looking to publish a cookbook with a good friend of mine. I'm super excited about that one. That will, he's a young Hispanic male. I say young, he's my age about, but he's from the Latinx community, and he and I are going to join together and put out a cookbook that draws cultures together through our food, but also draws generations together, because we see, of course, the splitting of generations, moms and dads and kids splitting. We got a lot of splitting going on, and we're like, well, let's do a cookbook, bring people back together. So those are some things. Oh, Anna says that food's her love language. Come on, somebody. So yeah, those are some things that you asked, Alene, you asked. That's my big dream right now. So yeah.
Can I just add, Shawn, that I think that taking this book into communities of color is just such a great resource for them to have, because in many ways they are fighting a war of their own. Right? So there's so much going on there on so many different levels, that having a framework like this to help them understand themselves and their fellow man and their neighbors better, I think would be really instrumental.
That's my hope.
That's an amazing goal. And I hope Oprah writes back, or her staff at least.
Yeah.
It's true. I hope so as well. And we do have some questions in the chat, but we have a treat for everybody before. We are going to invite Shawn to read from his book one more time, which I know everybody will be excited about. And then as he is reading, you can turn off your chat. Shawn will be monitoring the chat, so it's not distracting to you. You can go ahead and put your questions in there, and then Alene and I will read them out loud to Shawn. So let me highlight you again, Shawn, and take it away.
All right. Okay, so my second reading, I should not get emotional on this one. So you should be able to follow me. It's from the lead chapter. So that would be the last chapter in my 5 L's. During a recent trip to the Mogollon Rim outside of Pine, Arizona, I was once again reminded of the necessity of great leadership. As a part of the Huts for Vets Wilderness Healing Team, we ventured on a difficult 13.5-mile hike along the beautiful Geronimo Trail. We spent 3 days in the wilderness with veterans who had been struggling to make sense of things post-war, or post-trauma of some kind. I was asked back for this third trip, the other two being in the majestic Rockies near Aspen, Colorado, to be a leader and facilitator for our readings and a guide towards some sort of relief. The head honcho, you already heard from him in the foreword of this book, Paul Anderson. I have watched this man, who is not a veteran, by the way, launch young men and women into the incredible healing journey. And I've always been struck by by the way that he leads. One of the readings along the trail that helped veterans begin to open up is a reading from Aldo Leopold called Thinking Like the Mountain. Here's an excerpt. A deep chesty ball echoes from rim rock to rim rock and rolls down the mountain and fades into the far blackness of the night. It is an outburst of wild, defiant sorrow and of contempt for all the adversities of the world. Every living thing, and perhaps maybe a dead one as well, pays heed to that call. To the deer, it is a reminder of the way of all flesh. To the pine, a forecast of midnight scuffles and of blood upon the snow. To the coyote, a promise of gleanings to come. To the cowman, a threat of red ink at the bank. To the hunter, a challenge of fang against bullet. Yet behind these obvious and immediate hopes and fears, there lies a deeper meaning, known only to the mountain itself. Only the mountain has lived long enough to listen objectively to the howl of a wolf. Only the mountain has lived long enough to listen objectively to the howl of the wolf. This statement hangs suspended in my mind as I think back about a recent trip. It makes me ponder how leading well takes time. I think fondly of Paul and how over decades of knowing the mountain, he understands those who venture into mountain wilderness to find healing, to find the healing they deeply long for. In fact, I made a statement about Paul himself during our trip, and I hope he reads this with great fondness as I share it here with you. The mountain may indeed listen to the howl of the wolf, but Paul is a man who truly embodies the mountain. Leading so often in our culture today is done by people who have not had time to marinate their understanding. They are leading like they were just popped out of the microwave. They've barely graduated college and are already touting themselves as experts, consultants, and life coaches. What this world and your loved ones need is someone leading from living what I call a slow-cooked life. Back when my kids were young, on Sunday mornings, I used to put a roast in the oven before church. I would slice an onion in half and place it over the roast, along with generous salt and pepper. Along the sides of the Dutch oven, I would carefully place carrots and potatoes to be softened for lunch upon the return home. Placing it in the oven, I knew that when we opened the back door, the aroma of that roast, along with the vegetables and spices, would waft out to greet us. This smell is what I call Sunday morning. And you're wondering at this point, what does this have to do with leadership? In a word, genuine leadership requires seasons of life, a little spice, and marination, or it's not going to smell good. What I've come to learn over my years and watching a man like Paul is that leading comes from a place of allowing yourself to take the time needed to do it well, to allow for others to come close to you in the slow cooker of life, for you to season their lives as they season yours. Leadership should be slow cooked, or a patient ferment, to borrow from another author, to allow you to smell like Sunday morning to someone in need. When they know that you are fully cooked and seasoned well, it will be easier for them to receive your leadership. They will, in fact, smell that wafting from the kitchen and come to you with less defenses. They will know instinctively that they can follow you. This type of leadership, the slow cooked kind, allows a follower to trust and be at ease, even over the rocky and difficult heights in life. Thank you.
So we have some questions in the chat for you, and then Renee and I are going to facilitate these. Dolores asked, Shawn, have you reached out to the DoD or channels within the military to make it available to the family advocacy programs, family readiness centers, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Dolores, for that. I sent an email to General Freakley, who is President Crow's top military advisor. And what's really interesting about that story is that when I first came up with the 5Ls and I wrote a quick LinkedIn article, it was about the same time President Crow at ASU had said, we have a pandemic of suicide going on. And I thought, you're right. Here's something that we all could do. So I sent President Crow and General Freakley this email and told them about the 5Ls. And General Freakley said, let's meet. And I was like, whoa, you don't usually get to meet the general. So I was pretty excited about that. And I told him the story, and he, you know, it really built my confidence in the whole thing, because he said, what you've taken here is something so complex, but you've made it simple enough for everybody to digest it. And he said, that's the art of true genius. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. And then he said, so what do you need from me to help? And I said to him, I don't know yet, because I had no idea. And he said, well, reach out to me when you do. So I did. I said, General Freakley, I would love for you to get this into every hand of every family in the military. I mean, he was a 3-star over all of Iraq and Afghanistan for a long time. So he's got connections. And then one of the endorsers of my book is Wanda Wright, who is the director of the Arizona Veterans Services. And I asked her, can we get this out to the Veterans Services? Can we get some of these copies in people's hands? So I've started that in this. Thanks for asking. If you have more contacts, let me know.
That's good. And, you know, Shawn, there's a lot of comments in the chat just about the idea of slow cooked leadership versus the microwave leadership. And I think that's really important, and it resonates deeply, especially sometimes because culture says, you know, they have these 30 under 30 lists, you know, who hit $1 million under 30, and you know, and it's like, whoa, what happened to people who had the long haul careers and they got their success at 60 or 70 or 80. I mean, that I think is just as, anyway, so what you're doing, I think, is important. But the second question is, when does book 2 launch? Is there a tentative time frame?
Well, I like Renee said, you know, I'm in the middle of my master's classes. Jody and I are both taking sociology, and we're trying to get our master's. We're taking the same classes. I'm trying to cheat. She won't let me. So it could probably take me longer because I can't get the information I need out of the person I love the most. But besides that, I'm hoping to do the cookbook in 2022. And then I'm hoping 2023 that we'll do the return of the 5Ls. That's my hope anyway.
Thank you. And we have a third question. I think this is probably one that we'll take notes on. How can we all support you in pushing this book?
Yeah. So I'm really big. Thank you, Alene. I'm really big about sphere of influence. So everybody has a sphere of influence, whoever that is in your life, and you know who they are. Tell them about the book. Have you noticed often when somebody is sharing with you in conversation, they're like, well, I was talking to so-and-so and they're like really going through a hard time. I get this conversation all the time. Well, insert 5Ls. You know what? I know this has helped me and my family who's had a hard time, and maybe this can help you too. So within your sphere of influence, if that's Facebook, Instagram, person to person in your office, whatever it is, just tell them about it. My son told me the story that he went into he's a music teacher, elementary music teacher, and he went into an in-service day, and he walks in and he sees my book on the table, and it wasn't his book, and it was the guidance counselor had purchased my book. And I thought, well, that's amazing to me. So yeah, tell all your guidance counselors, tell everybody you know. That's all I ask. That's not much.
Shawn, you know, many universities and colleges have Veterans Affairs Centers, and this would be a really good place to get the word out. And if many of us maybe on the call are from, or our backgrounds are in academia, one of the ways we could help you is by just giving this book to our Veterans Affairs offices and having them maybe, you know, read it and then do a launch of it on, you know, for themselves too, for their department.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I know the center where I work, they're starting a book club, and my book's going to be their first book. So that's exciting too. So just what's really great about the book, if you purchase it, I have reflection questions after each chapter. So reflecting, how do I really love and how do I really listen? And so it's actually a nice book where you can read it in a group too.
That's right. Now, the next question is also requiring more work of you because we love you so much that we want you to continue to output. When will you record the audio? Because it really was amazing listening to you.
Oh, thank you. I just got to get the equipment, and I hear Renee Bhatti-Klug has some equipment that I can borrow. My plan is to get this ready for audiobook soon, and I'm going to read it. I just have to somehow separate a little time for that.
And you've got the office. I'm happy to leave this chair for 5 minutes in the day for you to do that. So yes.
I would feel pretty academically inclined sitting in that chair with all those books behind me.
Yes, that's true. Do we have any more questions that have come in? I know there were a lot of here's for the audiobook. Again,
Renee, Jennifer did put a suggestion in the chat that I didn't want Shawn to overlook. And she said that you might reach out to Pete Buttigieg and his husband. They connect with thousands of veterans and writers alike. So that could be a good resource.
Definitely. Renee, will you be copying all the chat for me?
yes, I will save it for you. Absolutely.
I appreciate it so much. Yeah.
So excellent. Well, Shawn, now there aren't any more questions unless you would like to unmute or ask another question. I'll give you a minute or.
I would welcome any comments, any questions. Yeah.
And then in the meantime, Shawn, if you have anything you would like to add or say before we wrap up.
I do just want to thank everybody, like from my heart. Yeah. This just means a lot to me to see that you would come and to listen to me. And what you do, you don't understand it really. You're just thinking that you're coming along for this thing. But what you've done is you've really done the first L. The first L, love, for me. I always say, when I used to be a pastor, I used to do weddings. And I would say, the key to a good marriage, it's pretty simple, actually. It's just called selflessness, is to put yourself below your spouse, right? Whoever that might be. And I think once you can find your place there, then you're going to see so much great love. And that's really what you've done. You've taken your time in the day and you've put it down here and you said, Shawn, I'm gonna give you this time. And really that's just an expression of love. And so congratulations, you're already on track to do all the 5 L's. Today was an example of that for me, and I just really appreciate you coming and doing that today too.
Yes, we appreciate it as well. We want to say thank you. We've included a couple of links in the chat. For 24 hours, the 5 L's on Amazon is decreased to the price $9.50, which is great. And then the Kindle $7.99. So you can share with your friends and family. And then tomorrow sometime, we'll also send this recording to you, to your email, and we'll also have it up on our different websites. Mm-hmm. So I always enjoyed speaking with you, Shawn, but it was really good to learn from you today, to hear from the book, to hear you read, and to hear your heart about kind of how the 5 L's came to be. Alene, would you like to say anything before we wrap up?
In many conversations with Renee, I always said to her, if Shawn could just come live with me for about a month, my life would be so much better. And and I think today was evidence of that. How many times have I said that, Renee? That is the truth.
So many.
The truth.
So many.
Yeah,
I actually told Shawn that because I knew that would make him feel better.
But it's the truth. And I think reflected in these comments too about your calming presence and the way you're so encouraging and your inflection and all of that. I think that everyone out there is lucky to have you. We're lucky to be partnered with you and I'm so fortunate to be your colleague. So thank you for this excellent reading. I learned a lot, and I'm really looking forward to diving in thoroughly to the book.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Well, again, we want to say thank you. We're early, about 10 minutes early, which is great. You can go back to eating your lunch or taking a nap or whatever you need to do. Hopefully it's not laundry. But we want to say thank you again to Shawn. Thank you again to all of you. We appreciate your ongoing support.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.